Let's move to this story as well. A curious one. Former Prime Minister Liz Truss has sent a cease and desist letter to Keir Starmer. I thought this was some kind of parody account when I first read this story. Over claims she crashed the economy with her 2022 mini-budget. She says it's Labour that has plunged the country into an economic crisis, and she's just released this on her Twitter feed.
Rachel Reeves has pushed this country to the brink of economic crisis through high taxes, high regulation, and disastrous net zero policies. When I tried to fix these problems back in 2022, I was undermined by the economic establishment, and I was forced to reverse the policies before they were even implemented.
I mean, 2 points on this, Brendan. I mean, we can argue about the cease and desist letter to the Prime Minister. That's just a bit weird. But has she got a point on the broader area she talks about there, that, you know, it's a bit rich coming from Labour, who have taken the economy in a downward spiral, far worse than anything that happened under Liz Truss?
You know, I'm a bit torn on this story because on the one hand, I think Liz Truss is right. I think it's wrong to say, technically wrong to say, that she crashed the economy, and she's right to say that she was actually prevented from implementing some of her policy ideas by what she refers to as the economic establishment, which was, you know, powerful economic forces actually did get in her way. She's right about that, and she's also right to criticise Labour. What Labour's doing to the economy is disastrous, and I think the net zero policies will probably be the most disastrous of all. So she's right on those issues, but I think she's wrong to send this cease and desist letter. I think it's quite censorious, and it could have a chilling impact on political debate. Political debate is often about strong-worded comments, hyperbole, you know, being colourful, being explosive. You know, we will often say that such and such a politician has destroyed this country and dragged it into the gutter and taken a wrecking ball to democracy or whatever. These are the kind of words we use in politics. And technically, some of it might not be true, but people know what we mean. So I think she's actually launched a fairly censorious attack on the right of politicians, including the right of Keir Starmer, to use whatever language they want to describe the time that she was in Downing Street.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely bang on. I mean, it's just curious that a former Prime Minister, she might have only been there for half an hour, but she was a former Prime Minister, would be contemplating some kind of legal case against the current Prime Minister. It's utter bonkers. But we'll watch and see how that pans out. It's one of those things I don't imagine Keir Starmer's going to be losing any sleep over anytime soon. Here's an interesting story. We were putting the show together around about 12:30 this afternoon, Brendan, and Richard Tice was waiting to appear on Julia's show, and he came bounding over to my desk and said, "Have you seen this?" And it was the latest opinion poll that has come out that shows that Labour and Reform are actually neck and neck. Sharp decline for the Conservatives, but Reform UK seem unstoppable.
They do seem unstoppable, and Labour should be worried, because I think one of the themes of our times is that working class voters are looking for someone they can vote for. They don't trust the Labour establishment anymore. They feel that Labour has stabbed them in the back. They feel that Labour doesn't take them seriously, either economically or culturally, that it has a bad impact on their bank balances, and it really looks down its nose at the way they live and the way they think and their cultural pastimes and so on. So working class voters feel like there's a pincer movement against them, one that's harming them economically and one that's harming their communities. And they're looking for someone else they can vote for. And I think a lot of them will turn to Reform. A lot of them will see Nigel Farage's insurgent party as a better representative of their interests than Labour. And I think they're right to think that. And, you know, we might see something here that we've seen in the United States. You know, Trump's second victory last year, and he'll be inaugurated in a few days' time, that was an extraordinary creation of a cross-race, cross-generational working-class voter base. Millions upon millions of working-class people abandoned the Democrats and voted for Trump. You know, there is a real appetite amongst ordinary people for a different kind of politics. And if Reform plays their cards right, they could be the beneficiary of that.
Yeah, it's not been the best week for reform in other respects. Nigel Farage, of course, lost the endorsement of Elon Musk. It seems to be still a bit of a public spat with Ben Habib. Howard Cox, former mayoral candidate for Reform UK, deciding he's leaving the party. He hasn't given his full reasons yet. But, you know, part of the rough and tumble of politics is that you surmount these hurdles, and I'm sure if anybody can cope with that, Mr Farage and Richard Tice can.
Yes, and, you know, it's been a rocky week for Farage and Tice, and they've gotten a lot of flack on the internet. A lot of it coming from slightly crazy people, I have to say, slightly cranky people, so I don't think they should take that too seriously. But on the other hand, I think they could come out of this quite well in the long term, because what Farage has made clear is that he can't be bought off by Elon Musk. And he made clear that he doesn't agree with Musk on everything, and he's not going to buckle to what Musk says just because Musk is dangling money in front of his nose. I think that's a pretty admirable quality in a politician. There aren't that many politicians in Westminster who would be willing to stick by their guns, even if someone was saying, I'm going to take away millions of pounds. So I think in the longer term, we might see this as the moment in which reform really separated itself from the crankier sections of the right and made a new name for itself as a mainstream party that working class people can trust.
Yeah, spot on. And finally, this one, Brendan. Thousands of civil servants are set to strike indefinitely over their back-to-office demand. Somebody has had the absolute audacity to suggest that they should, well, go to work. 4,000 of them didn't like it. These are the ones that work at His Majesty's Land Registry, and they're going to strike indefinitely. Even the miners didn't say we're going to have an indefinite strike. Goodness me. But these people from the 21st of January are downing tools because they don't want to go to work.
Unbelievable. Interesting that you mentioned the miners there, who, of course, fundamentally wanted to go to work.
Correct.
In really, really horrible working conditions, you know, really tough jobs that they had, and they wanted to do them. Here we have civil servants who have a pretty easy ride and work in nice offices and have a lot of perks, who want to stay at home. I think the work from home issue is becoming a real problem, actually. And there was a story a couple of weeks ago about local council officials some working overseas. One had been working from Ibiza for 4 years. I mean, this is really surreal stuff. It's having you can't do your job properly if you're at home all the time. You need to have meetings. You need to be face-to-face with people. You need to connect with the public. And also, city centres are suffering as a consequence of this as well, because people aren't going out to get lunch at lunchtime. They're not going to the pub after work. They're not mingling and socialising in the way they used to because they're all stuck at home. So shops are closing down. Pubs are suffering. The city centres are really having a rough time. Everyone will benefit. The workplaces themselves, the civil service and retail and other infrastructure will benefit if we scrap this work from home, get everyone back in the office.
The only scintilla of light is that come April the 1st, stamp duty, the most horrendous, almost criminal taxation. There are a few contenders in that department, but it's certainly up there. 3% to 5% it's rising. These are the very people that deal with that policy. If they're on strike, maybe it can't be implemented. I don't hold my breath on that, but that may well be, for a first-time buyer, a little moment of comfort in this grim story. Brendan, as ever, thank you. Great to have you on with us. He is, of course, Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer at Spiked.